So in the third instalment of while loops, we're going to start to look at condition controlled loops. So although there's a lot of similarity between counter controlled loops and condition controlled loops, there is some fundamental differences which we'll explore in this lesson. So let's just recap a bit about counter controlled loops before So let's look how we can use condition controlled loops in a problem. So the problem we have at the moment is we want to roll 2 dice, add up the total, and then ask the user, do you want to roll again? And if they do, we'll roll again. Okay. So what I've done straight away is just written the bit that we want to repeat. Okay. So like before, we don't want to repeat the import. So I'm just going to put a line there and remind ourselves not to repeat that. But the rest of it I do. I want to roll 2 dice. I want to add those 2 dice together. So if you remember, randint will pick a random number between, well, whatever numbers I put here. In this case, 1 and 6. Remember, int stands for integer. It's a random integer. Then it'll add those 2 numbers together and put it into a variable called total. And then I just have 2 very simple print statements to print them out. So if I run that program, you can see I get 2 numbers. If I run it again, I get 2. If I run it again, I get 2 different numbers, and so on and so forth. And you can turn this into a full game by doing additional things, putting if statements in there should you wish to. But for now, we're going to keep it simple. The next thing we need to do is actually turn this into a loop. Now we're going to use a condition controlled loop. So the first thing we need to do is having a starting point. Now I've got 2 options here, and I'm going to show you both options. But the first option I'm going to do is very simple. I'm going to put roll equals input, and ask the question, do you want to roll? So that's my starting point. Asking the question, do you want to roll? If they say yes, then I want to roll. So if the roll is equal to yes. So imagine I'm writing this as an if statement. Okay, so if the roll is equal to yes, then I want to do all this code here. I've got 2 dice, add them together, and print the result out. This becomes very similar to how we're going to do the while loop. So all I have to do is, instead of putting an if statement here, I'm just going to put a while. So while roll equals yes, I run the code. As it turns out, that's very straightforward, isn't it? You know, we know how to write an if statement. I just put the word while instead of if. However, there's one little thing we have to do. So remember, we need a way to get from the start to the end. Okay, remember in the condition control loop, that would be, the counter control loop, that will be my increment, adding or subtracting from the counter. In this case, it is input. So I'm going to copy this line here, and I'm just going to paste it there. So let's run this code now. So do I want to roll? Why, yes, I do. So it rolls 2 numbers. Do I want to roll? Well, yes, I do. Do I want to roll? Why not? I'm feeling lucky. Do I want to roll? No. I'm out of money. I'm going to stop. And it stops. So this is how we construct a condition control loop. Okay, we write the code that we want to repeat like we would with the other type of loop. We create our starting point. That tends to be a question. We then construct our while loop condition, which is simply going to be like an if statement, just put the word while there instead. And then finally, we put our increment, which tends to be the same question again. Okay. There's one last thing I can do. I can make this ever so slightly more efficient. Imagine I always want to roll at least once. And to do that, I just simply delete this input and put the word yes instead. So when I run this program now, you can see it says you rolled 2 and a 3. So do I want to roll again? Yes. It runs it again. Yes, and you get the idea. Okay, so that is just a slight minor change, but it will still work regardless. So let's look at the 3 steps we need in order to create a condition control loop. The first one is exactly the same as the previous type of loop, where we simply write the main part of the code. So in this example, I've written the dice code to roll 2 dice, add them together, and to print out the answer on the screen. The second point is actually almost the same as the first one. In the first one, we said create the the counter control loop. Here, we're just creating the start and end points. Now, actually, it's the same thing, really, if you think about it. If we create a counter control loop, then we have to write that start and end point, you know, the x equals 5, while x is greater or equal to 1. That's the start and end point, isn't it? So we write the start and end point. So in this case, we have the roll. Do you want to roll? So that's my starting point. Do you want to roll the dice? and that tends to be an input, okay, as a big tip. So I've put 2 tips on the screen just to kind of remind you. So that's tip 1, put the starting point in, and that tends to be an input. Then we do the second one. Now in the video previously I showed you that we could just simply write this as an if statement, then change the word to while. That is a really easy way to think about it. Write your if statement, then turn it into while. So this is again one of the reasons why you master your if statements before moving on to loops, because otherwise you'll find it harder effectively. But if you have mastered if statements, then your skills become transferable and while loops become easier. Simple as. We then need to indent the code in to make sure that is part of the loop. Okay, that indentation is actually crucial. You've got to identify what code is to be repeated in exactly the same way we did before. So in this case, I'm repeating all of this. Then step 3 is we write how the loop is going to stop, and that tends to be a copy of the starting point. Okay, so you can see these 2 lines I've highlighted are exactly the same. Okay, there's no difference, and all I've done is copy and paste it. Okay, but that allows me to get to the end. So eventually they're going to say no, and that will stop the loop. Just as a kind of a key point, if I enter anything other than yes, then it's going to stop the loop. Okay, so that is just how this code works. So it's time for you to do some coding. So the task I want you to do is have a kind of a random person picking application. So imagine you've got 5 students, so Bob, Sally, Zara, Yusuf and Simon, and they want to be able to pick between them. Maybe they're trying to choose who's got to do the next chore or whatever happens to be, I don't know, it doesn't matter. Your code will basically pick someone at random and then display the name. Then it'll ask whether you want to pick someone else, and then it will pick another person at random. Now it's okay to have the same person twice, so you might have Yusuf 3 times or Zara twice, it doesn't matter. Okay, that just makes this code a lot easier, by the way. So the starting code we're giving you is this, and this is basically picking a student between 1 and 5. So imagine we number the students, so Bob is 1, Sally's 2, Zara's 3, and so on and so forth. Then I pick a random number because that's easy. And then if I pick the number 1, then it's going to use this if statement to say, okay, Bob has been picked. Then it's if 2's been picked, then it's going to be Sally. You need to then continue that with some more if statements, okay, or more elifs, should I be really clear. Then you are going to use your knowledge of how to create a condition controlled while loop, following those 3 steps, put an input in there, getting a while loop, and putting an increment in there to get from the start to end, which is just going to be the input again. So those 3 steps I've already talked about really clearly in this lesson to actually produce the rest of this program. So have a go at that. I have created a model solution and explained it in the next part of this video. So here's the starting point that was given to you in the task. At the moment I have a student being picked at random, so it's picking a number between 1 and 5, and then obviously if student equals 1, that says Bob and Sally. I'm just going to repeat that code. Okay, I'm going to do it for 3, 4 and 5. I'm just going to change those numbers to be 3, 4 and 5, then change the name, so that's going to be Zara. Then there was Simon at the end, and there was Yusuf. I'm trying to remember who I picked. So that, if I run that program, you can see it's going to pick someone at random. So Zara's picked, Yusuf's picked, Zara's picked, Yusuf's picked, Sally's picked. I remember it's okay if we get the same one twice. It's not a big deal. So this is the code that I want to repeat. Okay, so that's your first starting point. So whenever you tackle this kind of problem, that is where you start. Remember, step 1, get the code that you want to repeat. Step 2 is set up the start and end points. Well, the start and end points will be a question. Do you want to pick? And if they say yes, then I do want to pick. So while pick is equal to yes. And then I indent all this code to say that's inside it. Finally, in my final step is I want to make sure I can go from the start to the end. So I just put that there. Now this will hopefully, just testing it will work, so let's run it. Do you want to pick? Well, yes I do. Yusuf picked. Do I want to pick? Yes I do. Zara's picked. Do you want to pick? Yes I do. Zara's picked again. Do you want to pick? No I don't. Then it stops. Okay, so that is the model answer to the question that we just looked at. So this challenge task may or may not be a challenge for you. I don't know, we'll see. So I want you to try a program which will basically ask for a password, okay? If I get the password wrong, it will not continue the program. It will say, you must enter the password and ask me again, okay? If I enter the password correctly, then it will say, well done, you can continue, or something along those lines. So have a go at this task. I've got the model answer on the next slide for you to have a look at. So although this answer is very straightforward, it does cover all the key elements of what I have been talking about in this lesson. So in order to get it working, you need to first of all ask the user what the password is, okay, which is this bit here. So we've got a starting point as well, because that is essentially asking for the password. I've then got my condition, okay, when I should loop. So my end point is the password is correct. So when the password is not correct, I want to ask it again, okay? Which is why I've got not equals as my condition rather than equals this time. I then print out a warning, okay, you should enter the right password, and then I ask it again. Okay, so this has all three elements of the things I was talking about. The thing I'm going to repeat, which is one, then they got it wrong. The starting point, which is asking for the password in the first place, and also the end point where the passwords are actually correct, are all the same. And then obviously asking for the password again, which is my kind of third step. So this is just following those three steps as I've already talked about in this video.